Greetings, guitar fanatics. Let's talk pentatonic scales. We know them, we love them, we all use them. They're usually the first scales guitarists learn, and we usually learn them in easy to memorize, 2-note per string patterns, 5 of them that span the fretboard. This is great because they're easy to learn and the 2-note per string pattern set up perfectly for alternate picking. However, those positives can also become negatives because guitarists like to do things fast. And unless you've got a bionic picking hand, it's really hard to play fast playing only 2 notes on a string. And let's face it, a lot of the pentatonic runs that we hear, after a while they sound kind of tired and cliched. Now, back in the late 1980s, a guitarist named Eric Johnson from Texas exploded on the scene, and one of the things that really caught a lot of attention was the way that he played pentatonics. First of all, he was fast. Not Yngwie fast, but he could really get around the fretboard. Second, and maybe even more influential, was the way that he moved through the pentatonic runs that he did. His licks were filled with arching, vaulting sounds that seemed to ripple like a stream running over rocks. They were filled with odd note groupings like 5s and 7 notes, and when he played these 5s, he would often switch direction in the middle of a lick, and he'd play things like this. These runs were incredibly hard to play with alternate picking, and as it turns out, Eric wasn't alternate picking. There was a little secret in his technique. He was using a mixture of alternate picking and a downward sweeping motion that allowed him to effortlessly play those weird 5-note groupings. So essentially, he would play 4 alternate pick notes, and then he would what I call backtrack to the previous string, and he would play a downward sweeping motion where he would finish the 5-note grouping and play the first note of the next grouping. And then he would carry on through the scale. This is ascending. Descending, the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, down, down. And again, he would what I call backtrack, jumping over to the previous string. That water tumbling over rocks effect his lines had were largely because of this, what I call backtracking. This little direction change that was constantly happening in the middle of his licks. Long story short, Eric's pentatonic runs are still incredibly influential. And of course, Eric's still out there sounding great. So there's a lot of ways that you can play these lines. I always struggled trying to alternate pick them, so when I first learned them, I kind of cheated using a mixture of picking and hammer-ons and pull-offs. And while it sounded close, I never really got the kind of articulation that I was looking for. I also tried Eric Johnson's method of the downward sweeping, but it felt really awkward to me. So what I came up with was something that to me felt so much easier, and I'm going to share it with you now. Now, I don't want to get into any debates about technique, and I'm not saying that my way is any better than anybody else's. I do know that it helped me. I feel confident that it can help you get some EJ sound into your playing. So let's check out exercise number 1. Exercise number 1, I'm going to call using an upward sweep to backtrack. So if you'll recall, I mentioned that Eric Johnson uses a downward sweeping motion to what I call backtrack and change direction in his pentatonic lines. I think what makes that feel so awkward to me is he actually jumps back over a string in sort of a circular motion to set up his downward sweeps. That always felt like wasted motion to me. So my way of overcoming that, and I stress again, this is just my way, was to actually use an upward sweeping motion to pick 2 successive notes and set up that 5 type pattern. So again, where Eric Johnson might play, and I'm going to play the 5th pattern of E major pentatonic, where at the 9th fret he would play down, up, down, up, down, down. And again, he would jump back over that E string to set up that downward picking motion. I'm going to play down, up, down, up. And then I have what I call reset my pattern, and I'm able to move right into the downstroke to start the next section of the lick. So once again, I'm playing C sharp with a downstroke, E with an upstroke, F sharp with a downstroke, G sharp with an upstroke. I'm going to carry on that upstroke and play E back on the 6th string, and it all feels super natural. And it feels equally natural to then continue with a downstroke and hit the F sharp on the next string. And to repeat that pattern. So let's go ahead and ascend through the whole pattern. We turn it around, we're going to descend. I'm going to play E, C sharp with down, up. I'm going to play B and G sharp, down, up. And then I'm going to continue with my upstroke to play the F sharp on the G string. Now I'm set to go ahead and downstroke to start the next pattern with B on the B string, G sharp, F sharp, E, and then carry on to the C sharp on the D string. And then we can repeat that and carry on through the whole pattern. So exercise number 1 is to get you comfortable moving through a pentatonic pattern, ascending and descending using what I'm going to call this double upstroke to backtrack. So that's sort of the basics of what I wanted to show you today. And of course, you need to practice it with all 5 patterns so that you're comfortable using that motion up and down the fretboard. So far we've been playing in one direction, either ascending or descending. But what happens if we want to change directions or we want to shift positions? That poses another challenge, and that leads us to exercise number 2. So exercise number 2 is to learn to change directions or position shift with a 3-note per string grouping. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take our first exercise and start it on the G string. So if I start with the E note on the G string, I can play 2 groupings of our 5s. And then I kind of run out of strings. So to be able to change directions, reverse directions in the lick, I'm going to play 3 notes per string on the high E string. And actually, I'm going to play a 6-note grouping. I'm going to alternate pick those 6 notes. So I'm going to play C sharp, E, that was down, up, F sharp, down, E, up, C sharp with a downstroke, and B on the B string with an upstroke. What that has done with that even number of alternate pick notes, now I have reset my picking pattern and I'm able to start a new descending 5s pattern with a downstroke on the E note on the E string. And I can carry that on as long as I want to. So we've established a couple of guidelines here. 1, we're starting our patterns with a downstroke. 2, if we're going to change directions, we need to play an even number of notes to reset the picking pattern to start the next grouping with a new downstroke. So in the first example here, I played a 6-note pattern starting with a C sharp on the high E string to reset our picking pattern. I could also play a 4-note pattern starting with the F sharp on the high E string. And now I've reset and I'm able to hit the E note on the E string and start a new descending 5-note pattern. What matters is that you play an even number of alternate pick notes. Now this also works if I'm in the middle of the fretboard and I just want to change directions for some variety. Let's start a lick on the F sharp at the 9th fret of the A string and play 2 5-note groupings ascending. Then I'm going to play, starting at the E note at the 9th fret of the G string, a 6-note pattern where I play E, F sharp, G sharp, F sharp, E, and an upstroke at the C sharp on the 11th fret of my D string, and now I have reset and I can start a new 5-note descending pattern. Or here's a really cool trick. I play my 6-note pattern and then I use a downstroke, up, up, and I play a 3-note pattern and then continue upward. So we're going to talk more a little later in the video about really mixing up our note groupings. So that's a direction change. What about position shifts? A really great way to shift positions is also to use a 3-note per string pattern. For instance, let's start with the E note at the 7th fret of the A string. We're going to play E with a downstroke, F sharp with an upstroke, shift up to G sharp with a downstroke. Now, we're setting up a new rule here. When we use a position shift and we use this 3-note per string pattern, we're going to play the 3rd note on the 1st string, and we're going to play the 1st note on the next string with a downward sweeping motion. So we've got down, up, down, down. Then we're going to play the C sharp at the 11th fret of the D string with an upward sweep, and we're going to catch the G sharp back on the A string at the 11th fret with the 2nd part of that upward sweep. So we've got down, up, down, down, up, up. And that gives us another 6-note pattern. And now we have reset and we can carry on with our alternating and upsweep pattern of 5s. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's descending. What about ascending? Let's start a descending run on the high E string at the G sharp note at the 16th fret. We're going to play 4 notes, which sets us up for a nice descending 5 pattern. And then I'm in a position when I play C sharp, B, G sharp on the G string to then position shift downward, playing the F sharp and the E on the G string. So that run. But because I've played 3 notes on that G string, now the picking pattern is out of whack, so we need to reset it. So our next descending grouping, I'm going to play F sharp, E, C sharp, and B, but only 4 notes. And now when I backtrack, once again, I'm in shape to play 5s. Now that has brought me down to the G sharp on the A string. Once again, I'm in position to shift downwards by playing G sharp, F sharp, and E. But again, I have played 3 notes on a string. I need to reset the picking pattern. So then I play 4 notes, alternate picked, G sharp, F sharp, E, and C sharp. And then I could be in position to do my upstrokes, but now we're out of strings. So that whole pattern, if I put it together, 4 notes to start it off, which resets the pattern, lets me do a 5. I do another 5, but I utilize 3 notes per string to shift. Now I have to play 4. I'm reset, I can play 5 again. I'm in position to play 5s, but with a shift. Now I have to reset and play 4. And I'm in position to, again, use downstroke, upstroke, upstroke. So what that means is when we're using 3 notes per string to make a position shift, we're going to have to mix in some even note groupings to reset our picking pattern, whether we're ascending or descending. And that leads us to exercise number 3. Exercise number 3 is for variety. We're going to mix up the number of notes in our groupings. One of the hallmarks of the EJ sound is the mixing of different note groupings. You'll hear a lot of accents on 3s, 5s, and 7s, followed by more common groupings like 8th notes and 16th notes. And as it turned out, that was probably a happy accident that was caused by his picking mechanics. Or it could have all been by design. I don't know. Either way, it sounds incredible. And we can make our licks sound a lot more interesting by mixing up the techniques that we've discussed so far. Let's start off with a simple one. I'm going to start at the E note at the 9th fret of the G string, and I'm going to play 2 ascending groupings of 5. Now I'm going to do my 6-note change of direction on the high E and B string. I'm going to follow that up with 1 descending grouping of 5. That's going to be followed by 6 descending notes going right down the pentatonic pattern, where I'm going to pick the first note and pull off to the second note on each string. Put that whole thing together, it sounds like this. Very EJ sounding. Now we could actually play that in 2 ways. I could play it really accentuating the number of different notes in the groupings, so you'll really hear the 5s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then that sort of loping 2-note per string thing. Or I could play it very straight and evenly with no accents. And even without the accents on the different note groupings, it still sounds really interesting because of sort of the forward back, that rippling, water flowing over rocks type sound. Here's a longer line. Let's start at the E note at the 12th fret of the E string. Basically, we're going to be in the E major 5th pattern this whole lick. We're starting on that E note, so instead of starting on C sharp and playing 5s, we're going to be playing 4. Now, since we're only playing 1 note on the E string, I'm going to start off playing the first 2 notes, the E note on the E string and the F sharp on the A string with a downward sweep. And then I'm going to play G sharp and E with an upward sweep. So that gives me a 4-note grouping. I'm going to follow that with a 7-note grouping, where instead of playing 4 alternate pick notes on 2 strings and then catching the last 2 notes with that upward sweep, I'm going to play 6 notes on 3 strings. The last 2 are done with that upward sweep. Then I'm going to do my 6-note change of direction, starting at the E note on the G string. And then I'm going to play a 3-note figure where I play the F sharp with a downstroke, E, and C sharp with upstrokes. So I've got, that sets me up now to do 2 5-note patterns ascending. Now I'm at the E string. I can do my 6-note change of direction reset. I'm going to do 1 descending 5. And then I'm going to play 8 notes, 2 notes per string. I'm going to pick the first note on each and pull off to the second. Putting that together, getting up to speed a little bit, sounds like this. I think these patterns are spellbinding, and I never get tired of this sound. So, I don't know if this changed your life, but it's certainly changed my pentatonic playing, and I hope it can change yours too for the better. Thanks again for supporting the channel. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. And as always, you keep practicing. I'm going to be out here making these videos that are going to help you make sense of soloing. Bye.